Alright, so I was going to look for some much older figures, and I'm sure out of my hundreds of figures that I have, I probably could have found some old ones, but with my G.I. Joe room getting ever so small, it's a little harder to find stuff without stuff falling all over or me having to basically unpack the whole room. So I'm going to show some different versions of figures. They're not technically versions of the same figure, because when people usually talk about a version, they mean the same character that's just been updated or changed. So the first one we're going to use as a comparison is AVAC, and he came with the Firebat, which is the plane that came with Terradome, which is one of the Cobra bases. And what we basically wanted to show you about him is that his head only moves side to side, and it's actually attached from the underside of the head to a ball joint neck. And but what they did with newer ones is they made it more of a ball so that he can actually move his head up and down. So probably hard to see with my jittery camera, but he is able to look a little up, a little down, and side to side. But the very first ones that came out in 1982 only had side to side motion in their heads. So then we were going to show you the next thing that makes it an older G.I. Joe figure, and that is that his arm or shoulder up on the top, and boy, that's not helping much. Trying to show you without it being, there we go, that's better. So right up there, there's a circular thing in his shoulder, and that's made of metal or aluminum or something like that. Then also the one on the side here is also made out of metal. And so I don't know if some of the customizers know how to take those out, but basically once they're in there, I don't know that you can take them out. So that's another thing that shows you that it's an old figure. The fact that he has an O-ring makes him an old figure. The fact that he can only bend his knees, right in there, up and down, makes him an older figure. The fact that he has no other joints other than his knee, his hip, his elbow, his O-ring, of course, which is the mid-waist area, right in there is the O-ring. And then, of course, his head. And then his shoulders can move 360 degrees. I don't get too much into articulation because it's kind of hard for me to remember all of them, because there's ball joint, there's swivel this, there's slit this, there's cut this, every single different type of joint that manufacturers come up with has a different name. So anyway, that's a older figure. Then we're going to go into a pretty recent figure from 2000. And 2000, or that era, they didn't have the best proportion. So he does have the same ball joint type head, so he can move side to side, up and down. The shoulders are about the same. The only big change is that they went to, and again, I don't think you'll be able to see it, but they went to plastic joint or pegs to hold the arms together. They're no longer metal, so that's kind of cool, because that way it blends in. You got all blue instead of some blue and then the little silver joint. But he still has an O-ring. He still has the same knee articulation. And so that shows how they at least updated it by having plastic pegs to hold the arms and legs and all that together. So then we talked about the T-crotch in the last video, and a T-crotch is, like I was saying, right there. And the reason I believe they called it T-crotch is because that square right there, if you follow that up and then goes side by side, that is forms a T. And he does not have an O-ring, so he is only able to swivel around his waist. So you can totally twist him all the way around. Not that you want or need to, but you can. And then, like I was saying, because he is a T-crotch, his legs only move side to side. And let's try and show you that. It's so hard to do that with not having two free hands. But basically, he can only move it forward and backwards. Unlike if you have an O-ring figure, we will show you it forwards, somewhat backwards. It doesn't go all the way. But there it is sideways. And he can even somewhat do the split. So of course the T-crotch guy also can do the splits much better, but he cannot move his leg sideways. So like that, that's supposed to show you that it's moved out sideways, because if you try and do that with him, you're just going to break his legs off. So not many people want that to happen. So anyway, so that was to show you why we don't like T-crotches, but the G.I. Joe did have them not only in the early line because of the gimmicks, you know, because it would be like if you pushed his two legs together, there would be mechanisms in the legs that are connected to something within the chest that would cause the arms to move, and then there'd be other ones where they could get the waist to move side to side. But again, if you're playing with an action figure, you should be able to move and make the action yourself. You shouldn't need some gimmick or something to make the hand move, or it's like, just move it yourself, right? So anyway, this is a little bit more updated version, and this is the 25th anniversary version of G.I. Joe. And how they did that is that no longer do they have a separate waist piece from the midsection or abdomen. The abdomen and this middle piece right here are all one piece. And then what they did is they sculpted a separate upper chest piece. And so that still gives you some motion, unlike this figure, because he has his harness on. But you would get some back and forth movement, and we're going to have to move on to another video to explain why else this figure is a step in the right direction.